Ghostbusters Afterlife. Is it a worthy sequel or just another excuse for the studios to put something out there? Feel free to like and subscribe and let's find out. Set in small-town Oklahoma, as opposed to Manhattan's inner city, Afterlife is about familial lineage, rather than Ghostbusters 2's more cartoon-influenced marketing. Not that I'm knocking Ghostbusters 2, by the way.
Command me, Lord!
In a nutshell, 37 years after the original film, ancient Sumerian god Gozer the Guzerian is back at it again, and the original Ghostbusters have disbanded years prior. Who you gonna call?
He-Man!
Well, not him. The grandchildren. Without giving anything away, we all know Harold Ramis has passed. Thus, Egon has passed in this film and fled New York years prior. But his daughter, he didn't raise, and grandchildren are the focus point of Afterlife. Specifically, Finn Wolfhard of Ghostbusters influenced Stranger Things fame as the grandson Trevor Spengler, and a terrific performance, I must say, from child actress McKenna Grace as Phoebe Spengler. A single motherhood, the height of baby boomer innovation and burden of millennial inheritance, is no cakewalk. Kaylee Spengler struggles to raise her two darlings in the quote-unquote big bad city, until one day she is given her eviction notice and forced to relocate to her recently deceased father's farmhouse in the fictional Summerville, Oklahoma. From there, the kids, especially the daughter, find themselves in their new environment, discover paranormal activity as well as Egon's old Ghostbuster equipment. Hook up with the sexiest man alive, a late 40s, early 50s dude from Clueless, school teacher, and discover ghostbusting for themselves. On a side note, big up Podcast.
Yes!
Wicked little character, and Phoebe Spengler's newfound friend, named Podcast. Why, you might ask?
Why do people call you Podcast?
Because he loves train spotting, because he loves stamp collecting, possibly rock climbing.
Why do people call you Podcast? Why do people call you Podcast?
Because he has a podcast.
Because of my podcast.
Him and Phoebe, who is incredible I might add, are what provided this film with its own independent identity and a breath of fresh air into the franchise where 2016, it seems, sadly failed.
Did you want to? Sorry, I'll let you.
Now the question is, why is this franchise even relevant at this point in time when it was something that got played out in the 80s? As someone who was born in 1982, the first Ghostbusters was one of the first movies I ever saw on video, 86 or whenever. Then the cartoon came out on TV and the toys were the thing. Late 80s Ghostbusters cartoon on TV, that was well wicked.
Well, wicked.
Wait mate, yeah? You're talking late 80s British Kids TV. Grange Hill, flipping, She-Ra, all of that bruv. You're talking Mr. Bronson, him out of Empire Strikes Back. But as a school teacher in Grange Hill with a toupee.
Say, I am very sorry, sir, in French.
Something.
Je m'appelle sorry innit? Okay, so what I'm saying here, the original movie was one of those universal films for kids and adults, depicting New York as an urban jungle inhabited by actual humans with real world-like personalities.
Can you excuse me for a second?
It was the first semi-grown-up type film that I'd watched and could unconsciously grasp grown-up stuff is happening whilst appreciating the proton packs, ghost battles, Marshmallow Man, etc. The cartoon came out and I kind of became more frequented with the cartoon rendition of the characters than the actual actors who played those characters in the first movie. So then comes 1989. Just before Ninja Turtles became massive in the UK, we have the second film, now influenced by the cartoon, hence Janine's wig.
Ghostbusters, yes, we're back.
Now, in terms of the second film, everybody knows it's inferior to the first. But for 1989, I don't remember the audience it was marketed to at the time being big film critics, dissecting its filmic flaws. We wanted a sequel and we got one with all the original cast. Believe me, it was a lot better than all these new modern franchise sequels. It was made because of the marketability of the first film, i.e. Ecto-1, proton packs, etc. Not the Saturday Night Live aspect.
I don't believe you're seriously considering listening to these men.
Get him out of here.
Bye.
It was a commercial film at the time, that's what it was supposed to be. And on that note, big up Bobby Brown before his life went upside down.
Ghostbusters! How you doing? Hey guys, come right this way.
Bush mash, bish mash, bush mash, bush. Lastly, on this franchise walk down memory lane tip, Ghostbusters 2 came out in January of 89, but came out in Christmas of 89 in the UK, literally sending the 80s out with a bang, because believe me, a few months later in 1990, kids at school weren't talking about Ghostbusters anymore. They were talking about Michael Keaton's Batman, and flipping Ninja Turtles. Like, we forgot Ghostbusters the second the 90s started. So from a franchise perspective, it's like Giza. It was an 80s affair, not Star Wars, which like spanned from the flipping 70s until now. By the early 90s, it was played out. So I don't look at it as this long, eternal franchise. It was a movie in 84, a cartoon in 86, a sequel in 89, then it was done. All this, the franchise is being devastated, the franchise is being destroyed. Ain't no franchise like that. This whole, when 2016 came out, it destroyed our childhood. Bruv, how can something that came out after your childhood destroy your childhood? This Star Wars notion of a franchise that the entertainment media should keep reviving old material is too much. When 2016 came out and this whole woke discourse, I just ignored it. A film about women doing men stuff, if you don't like it, don't watch it. And then before the pandemic, Afterlife is announced. It looked a bit more appealing. I went to see it and that's the end of it. It's a good film. There you go. Like, what else do you want? McKenna Grace's Phoebe Spengler was great, bless her, as the kid who finds herself as an aspiring scientist.
Maybe it's the apocalypse.
That podcast kid was cool because he's a young kid doing traditional young kid stuff. Yes! Whilst being current, hence podcast.
Why do people call you podcast?
This was in the spirit of 80s childhood stuff. Family is at the heart of this, hence Kaylee Spengler is the first generation millennial with baby boomer inherited daddy issues.
The only thing lurking inside here is my slowly dying soul.
She's now a single mum in the big city as Sigourney Weaver was in 2. That's what made part 1 and 2 work. That was a depiction of the boomer generation in the 80s.
You've never been out of college. You don't know what it's like out there. I've worked in the private sector. They expect results.
We now have generations of single parents, from boomer to Gen X to millennial, tied into this kid's sci-fi adventure film. Hence, Afterlife works as a film just from a film perspective, but unfortunately, from a franchise perspective, it's a bit burdened with the chore of bringing back the original remaining Ghostbusters.
Have you missed this?
Interweaving that with this new plot is flawed, but only in terms of execution. The new characters overall work. Sexiest Man Alive done an adequate job as the school teacher who believes 1984 really happened and wasn't a conspiracy. The overall issue with this picture was bringing the old cast back. I really think that they should have brought all the cast members back, just not as Ghostbusters right at the end. That was the issue. It's like we're gonna get the old boys in their old suit to come and kick some ass. This was a movie about these young kids, then right at the end you bring the old cast back dressed up as Ghostbusters. It didn't really work. However, Egon, the CGI Egon coming back as a ghost, was a better trade-off to this franchise than with the Star Wars sequels in terms of bringing Luke, Han and Leia back, because you didn't get one scene with the 3 of them together. So in summary, in terms of Ghostbusters Afterlife, for Ghostbusters Afterlife, I did like it. It was in the spirit of 80s kids films, specifically Phoebe podcasts like Goonies and so forth. It was just adventurous young kids who want to find themselves. And this paranormal activity is the means that these kids find themselves. My only slight issue, not with this movie per se, is the notion that it might be erasing Ghostbusters 2, or it might be disregarding the events of Ghostbusters 2. Not going to get too much into that, because I do believe they did show the toaster from Ghostbusters 2, but it was more just inclined to dealing with Ghostbusters 1 as a backstory. My only thing is, how can you eradicate Ghostbusters 2? Janosch. How can you eradicate Janusz?
How's the baby?
No photographs, please! Slides are available in the gift shop.
The possessed creep. Ghostbusters Afterlife. I don't know if it's better than Ghostbusters 2. That's the only thing. I am biased. I'm biased by my own nostalgic memories. So it's hard for me to say is Afterlife better than 2. It sort of is. Afterlife was a good film after all these years, where 16 was the mess that 16 was. So Afterlife gets a 7.6 for me. Overall, I'm happy to see Ghostbusters. I'm happy to see the original cast. Just the way it was executed was a bit off. 7.6, good film. If you made it this far, thank you very much. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.
Why do people call you podcast?
I call myself podcast because of my podcast.